was nothing, just lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil. Yeah.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another preview review show of the Green Veil. John, how are you tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. Hanging in there?
Huh?
Hanging in there? Because you had some tough weather there, I think, tonight.
Yeah, we're getting rain finally.
Just rain, no thunderstorms, no severe weather?
No, nothing staying south of us, thank goodness. But
Good.
we're supposed to get a lot of rain tonight, so we need it. So.
Well, there is something that hasn't changed since last week, and that's lack of information coming about Atlas, 3i Atlas. Nothing, John. Crickets.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen is that people are starting to say that there's something surrounding it. There's somebody saying a picture was leaked and it shows other objects around it. Other than that,
Exactly. That's what I seen too, that there was other objects around it. And I mean, for me personally, it's a comet until proven otherwise. The likelihood it is probably a comet, most likely, but until we get more information, there's so much speculation of what it could be. Obviously, even the many astronomers are saying the likelihood it's a comet, but what if it's not?
Well, I think my question is, if you go right down to it, why would Javi Loeb want to stick his neck out like this if there wasn't something more to it than it being a comet? It doesn't make any sense because ultimately he has hedged his bets and said 40%. But at the same time, if he didn't think it was something more to it than just being a comet, why would he stick his neck out? There's something that the data's showing him that he's concerned about. So, and then the government itself, all the governments have refused to.
That's the thing, John. ESA, again, we said it last week. I thought we would have something by this week and still nothing. I mean, This is just, it's bizarre to me that we haven't gotten more information from the observations that they made. I mean, what is it now? 2 weeks? It's going over 2 weeks that this.
Yeah,
third, I believe.
Yeah. They have not. There's been, other than they've said there was a picture leaked out that showed other objects around it, which was never verified.
Another object that people are talking about is the Comet Swan 2025.
Right.
And a friend of mine, you know him as well, Mark D'Antonio, he actually took an image last night. And this is it right here. Isn't that amazing?
Isn't it supposed to be starting to turn blue?
Well, he took this image last night. So I don't know.
I mean, I read about that today, and they said that it's going to start to show more and more blue in it, is what somebody said. So.
But that's an awesome image he got last night with his telescope in Arizona.
Right.
So for folks that are interested in that, I know it's a little off topic, but he will be streaming again tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. His channel on YouTube is Sky Tour Livestream. So if you want to go check it out, he's going to be focusing on Comet Swan. But right here, we're focused on the Green Veil.
Yeah, but that comet is, I didn't know, when did this come out? This is just all of a sudden.
This is more recent too.
So no one talked about this comet until now?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with that is that what I read today was they said it's going to, as it gets closer to the sun, right? And is it not supposed to pass inside the Earth? I mean, the moon, inside between the Earth and the moon?
I did not hear that. I heard
I thought I read something like it's going to be close to the Earth. It's going to come between the moon and Earth. Well, that could go back to the Hopi prophecy and the blue Kachina star.
I've heard it being referenced to that, the Kachina. Yes, I have heard that. That people.
And isn't it crazy that you have this pop up, Three Eye Atlas pop up? Our governments are talking about it, and it's just a little strange.
I believe this one's going to make its closest approach by October 21st.
Right.
And then we have the 29th on the calendar. And I don't know, John. I don't know when we're going to start getting information from this.
Well, according to what
it's crazy.
No one sent me, and the guy may still be reporting on it. There's a weekly or every 2 or 3 days, some guy seemed pretty level-headed about talking about what they were observing, what was going on. He said that Mars was the closest we get a look at it until, even if it pops out from around the sun, they're not going to get another close look at it until December. So it's basically whatever they saw when it passed Mars is the last they can say about it until December, when they're supposed to get a better look at it, other than where does it pop out from around the sun, I guess.
And then Avi also made a reference that it may be hollow or it has pockets in it because the gravitation field doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Now, if that's true, could that, when it slings near the sun, could that change its direction?
Well, that was one of the speculations that it's going to come out from around the sun, not where they think it is, and it's going to be in line to come straight towards the Earth. That's what some people have been speculating.
But you have to think about it from a scientific perspective. If it has different density, it has different effects when it goes near the sun. I mean, what they originally thought of its true trajectory may change based on the actual density of Three Eye Atlas. It may. The sun, in other words, the sun may have a more of an influence on this object. So I think right now, unless they have access to the data, and I'm sure they do, and I'm not just talking about NASA, but the ESA and others, we're just not going to know until they tell us. And I don't even know. It's so quiet, John. This is so bizarre. It's like they're all working in tandem to keep this hush-hush for now. And I'm trying to figure out why. You know,
there's a whole all possibilities of prophecy. I've been busy this week, so I haven't had a chance to see as much as I would, but I don't know. Has Javi said anything this week?
Not that I'm aware of. The last thing I heard was when he mentioned about the possibility of it being hollow.
Okay. And
it's spewing water like a fire hose and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's what this other comment's doing too. That was part of the article I read. It's spewing water off of it, which is not normal, I guess. I don't.
And after watching chapter 12 and seeing the characters, Jack and Leo, and seeing their relationship as far when it comes to the resonance, the signal, and the pieces to me are like, I can't say because I'm sure there's going to be another curveball coming in the future. But it seems like now you can kind of understand the relationship. But it to me, it looks like Jack is there almost like as a translator, interpreter. But it looks like this is just my perspective looking forward. It looks like Leo is going to be the main focus of what happens in the future. Am I reading that wrong?
No. Leo's definitely going to play a major part in this, yes.
And also how the world powers are trying to deal with this and trying to contain it. And it's typical. It seems like they're all talking the talk, but meanwhile, they're plotting behind the scenes to try to figure out a way how they can manipulate or try to understand what this technology is. And of course, the possibility of the weaponization of it.
Sure. I mean, this came back after Blue Book, I forget again. I don't have the notes in front of me, but there was a particular time where somebody was involved, and China made the statement. I forget who this guy was. He's, deep in government stuff. The Chinese said they will come forward with that they know about. They called it UFOs at the time. The day the United States opens up to what they have. So there'll be a close second to talk about disclosure of what they know after the United States opens up to what they have. Well, as you can see, the United States isn't, and when I say by the United States, the interior of our government, the secret squirrels that are in there have no desire to let out anything that they know about what UFOs/UAPs are and what we've done with them and what we are capable of using them for.
Because I know I can speak to you like this because you're a very direct and blunt individual, and that's why I have the utmost respect for you. And I'm just going to ask, the things that we see in this fictionalized series, they are based on connections to actual events, correct?
Sorry.
Can I ask it?
No, it's not that at all. It's how do I want to word this? There's a lot of factual stuff in this series. And what I mean by factual is things that have been presented to me or have happened, or research is pointed towards technology and its capabilities. Okay. Now, the thing that I did, and I've said this from the very beginning, was so much of it most people aren't even aware of, that it's really hard to put it in a book because your eyes will glaze over. So my thoughts were to make it into this type of presentation so it would tell a story based on science fiction. But if you really go back on all these science fiction shows, a lot of what's been in these shows are happening today from the past.
So when we speak about this time distortion, I'll call it a time distortion bubble. When you were in the woods, is this similar, or do you have recollection that this is something similar that is being discussed in this chapter to what you experienced there?
Well, that's what I mean by documents and stuff. When after it happened, there'll be questions. What happened? Well, there was static electricity. Things slowed down. A watch is 45 minutes slow. All these different things that different people, including myself, describe at the very moment it happened, and going forward for quite a few years, we had no idea what it was. We just described what we felt, what happened to us.
When you notice the times, so you're saying everyone, some watches were affected.
The first night, Pennison and I's watch were 45 minutes slow.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. So both of you, it was 35 minutes.
45 minutes slow.
So he has a totally different recollection of the events. He had the exchange with what he's seen like a physical object, symbols, whatever his experience was. It seems to be, that's his recollection. I'm not here to discuss his point of view because he's not here. But it seems like this. Do you think that what you encountered was a physical object, or it was something like this that was some type of an energy field of some kind, like what was being described here as a time?
Well, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. At the time, we just described the different things that we remembered, felt, whatever, and different people had different memories. It was going forward when you started researching those particular symptoms or effects that you started finding information that supported, based on what was described, what triggered it. It's no different than a time dilation bubble. And that's part of the equipment that was out there in that forest, whether they directly knew at that moment they were trying to do that, or as a guy that I know that works inside government said, it was just like we've talked about before. The lasers created radars. They were working on the death ray, and they discovered the radars. They've discovered these different weapon systems while they were working on a different weapon system that they knew existed, or they were developing, and then other technology from that particular system evolved into something different. So what was going on outside the back gate with Marconi and Aria Bowsy, and all that, and the area we were in, created most likely a time dilation.
Because 12 really kind of put the pieces in place. I think it gave myself an understanding. I can't speak for Chris, he's not here tonight, but it kind of put the pieces together that this was all planned, but not necessarily that you were manipulated in any way, or we'll just say Sergeant B. But maybe he had some role that he did not understand. That maybe, like you said, like what's suggested in this fictionalized series, that almost like you've mentioned in the past, the Manchurian Candidate type of deal. Or you guys just happened to be in the wrong place on the wrong time when they were doing this, and you were out there in the field and you were exposed to this.
Well, I have no idea. I mean, based off of what Andrew Pike's work was, they were aware of the phenomenon there. They definitely were working on technology. You have to throw the factor in, which was in the Greenville, and it's in the weaponization book, that they were also working on bringing the satellite down.
Right.
There was a spy satellite that they were working on technology there that could bring satellites down. And there's a lot of evidence that supports that, what they did, including that was presented in the weaponization book. So that would create effects. Think about it. They had to slow the object down. They had to generate the power. They had to do these different things. So the fact is that this stuff had been seen. There have been weird stuff happen in the middle of December. Was it middle of December? I think it was in November even. That some stuff happened on one particular night. And so whether or not they actually were utilizing us as like guinea pigs, or we happened to see something, and I mean, you could go one of two ways with this. The reason why we went off base was something was seen coming down into the forest. They confirmed it on radar that there was something over the area that went into the forest. So the protocol that was followed was they notified the British police and fire department, but also because they were far away, something may have crashed. The shift commander, and he never clarified ever, but most likely for us to go off base like that, he had to clear it through the command post. They decided that they would send a 3-man team out into the forest to see if something crashed. So the base itself did not know what was going on out there with those facilities, the direct people working. So did we get sent out there by our command to be guinea pigs? No. Now, whether or not the people out there running the stuff wanted us to come out there, or it was just the way everything came together, we went out there and they didn't even think we would because it was off base. And then once it happened, the old saying, never let a crisis go to waste. Mm-hmm. So once we went out there and they saw shit happen to us, then it evolved from there. It could very well be.
But do you believe today that this was an actual secret test, a test of some type of weapons platform?
Yes.
Definitely not.
I mean, it's there was involved the phenomenon. I'm in the middle of FOIA right now, and the latest is with the MOD. They told me I asked for too much information, right? So I'm doing different agencies, and the last one that came in was there's 3 outstanding right now. One of them said narrow it down. So I narrowed it down in scope, because they said they had so much data it would go past their cost limit. They have so many hours they can do it, and then they won't do it above those hours. Mm-hmm. Like the American government will say, well, we'll give you a quote and you'll pay for it. The British say, if it goes past these hours, we're not going to even do it. So they said, narrow your scope, right? They told me that. They said, we're advising you under whatever whatever thing that they have, section or whatever they call it, that you can narrow the scope down. So I narrowed the scope down to this one agency, and they came back and said there's nothing on file. Now, how can that be?
I mean, really?
No, because 1 minute they said there was too much data, and now they're saying there's nothing on file.
Right.
The other two agencies that I've got stuff with, which again, they told me to narrow it down. It took them 12 days to answer the fact that they received it and they were considering FOIA. And I'm curious to see if they're going to, there's very specific questions that will not take 24, I think it's 24 hours, that anything above 24 hours, then they cut it off. These two questions that are one or two different agencies are not going to go over the 24-hour threshold, or it's the mother load. And again, but the point being is this one agency just said, well, there's nothing on file now. So they're hiding all this technology and what they had and what they were working on out there.
And obviously we're in cahoots with the United States government, because that's where I was going to go with this next. Excuse me. Obviously, there has to be documentation of this event somewhere. There has to be a record.
They have the files. They've admitted that. They hold the documents. It just is there's so much of them that they don't.
Who has it? The MOD or us?
The MOD has it, but I'll give you another example. This was FOIA I did over a decade ago. Okay, and I asked specific questions about, are they weaponizing UAPs? And surprisingly, I got an answer back. And they said yes.
Do you have that documentation?
Yes, I do. And they said that they are, and they blacked it all out, and they have these rules like Section 16, Section 18. And one of the things that they said that they couldn't talk about what's in it had to do with international relations with other countries. And another one was private industry, patents and stuff. They couldn't discuss any of this with that. But this time, they won't even do that. They just tell you they got a ton of documents, but there's too many based on my questioning.
Or nothing at all.
And then they just came back on the one and said, oh, well, we don't hold anything now. And then there is an appeal process. And again, I've never appealed, but I know there's a guy in the UK that was in a weaponization book called David Clark. He actually, when I got the MOD like over a decade ago to admit they were holding more files, they came out and Clark was the guy that came out and did it. He said all documents have been released by the MOD now. Mm-hmm. Everything they have on UFOs have been released. Well, I got a FOIA in, and they said they hadn't released everything. So at the time, I was going back and forth with them, and then they sectioned me and said, we won't discuss it any further other than we will release the documents eventually. Now.
And that was a decade ago, right?
But no, what they did was two things were going on. One thing, I didn't know what Clark was doing, but the second thing was, this is how they did it. The documents that they held were kept at Whitehall. You had to make an appointment to go in with only a notepad and a pencil. And you had 3 hours to review the documents, which was a lot of them, and make notes. And then they had to look at the notes before you could leave. So you had to go to Whitehall to look at these documents. Now, Clark, what was interesting was, and I didn't know this till after the fact, and it's in the book, the weaponization book, he appealed this, and they were never going to release it, but they have an appeal system that eventually goes to the court. And he had it at the final appeal. It was going to go to the court, and they were going to rule on this. And at that point, they begrudgingly released documents the way they did, where you had to go to Whitehall to look at them.
It's so interesting that you brought that up, because I believe I may misquote this, I may misremember this, but I'm pretty sure Graham Rendell has done a lot of research in the UK His thing was Foo Fighters, etc. But he told me a similar story that you just told me. The procedures when you go in there to take notes, a pen and paper. The same. He pretty much told me the same thing you just said to me.
No, but I don't know if doing those particular files, but that was they told me, and that was even screwed up the way they did it. First of all, I got them to admit to it, and nothing was said about it. Then I went over to the UK to do a conference, and I did a press release to all the press agencies that I was coming and was going to talk about these documents that the UK held, that the MOD held. Mm-hmm. And I got no acknowledgement from any of the press or anything else. Now, what was interesting was I went over there, did the presentation. As my plane, this is the fact, my plane left Heathrow, as it was wheels up heading back to the United States, the Star came out with a brief little article online saying the MOD admitted that they held more files and they would release them eventually.
Which never
happened. My FOIA is, when I followed up, they said they were going to release them within 6 months. Then it was a year. Then it was longer. And it took over 3 or 4 years before they finally did. And I didn't know Clark was the reason why. Right. Because he got it to the appeals court. And the court was going to have to rule whether they could hold them or not, even though they openly admitted that they had them and they were going to release them. So before the court ruled, they came back and said, we're going to keep them here. You have to come and visit. You only got 3 hours with a pencil and paper. It wasn't a pen. It was a pencil. And they had to review what you wrote.
Believe that.
They got to review your notes before you left. And they threw another stipulation on that technically you could not discuss it or release what you looked at in these files and make them public. People blew that off. Some people went and they looked at some of the files and they wrote some notes and they released what they saw. But they technically said you could not even make public what you saw in those documents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the UK perspective.
Right.
Now, you had some type of clearance when you were at the base.
Yeah, I only ever held a secret clearance.
Okay.
I never was top secret or above.
The reason I asked that is if you were asked to go into some type of a skiff, would they be able to reinstate and even give you the clearance capability to enter that skiff to see any documents, and I'm speculating, that has anything to do with the incident that occurred there in 80?
Okay, here's kind of how this works, okay? And I'm not an expert, but I can tell you based on what I've experienced and was involved with. First of all, even if you get a top secret clearance, like, for example, there are people in the cop squadrons that I were in, some of them got top secret clearances, but it wasn't to actually work on top secret information. Some of it was if you were like, say you worked at SAC headquarters at Offutt, and you were like the elite guard, you would be there sitting there and you might overhear some conversation, or you might be asked to handle a document or stand guard in a room where classified material was being talked about. So they gave those people TS, or people that were going to, like, for example, you always had to have somebody in each flight that had TS, because there were times when the command post would get top secret information sent to them. You would have to go over, and it was all sealed up so you couldn't see it, and you would have to pick it up and bring it back into a unit where it would be locked in your safe for review by the person that had top secret. You weren't even going to see what was in it or know what it was, other than it was top secret. Mm-hmm. But you couldn't even handle the information unless you had a TS. So if it was secret information or classified, I could pick it up. If it was TS and above, the person had to have that clearance to even transport something that you had no access to. I mean, technically, you could technically open it if you wanted to go rogue. But that was how it was. But there's a caveat. When I was deployed overseas, I was exposed to top secret and above information. But when it happened, you immediately were brought in, debriefed, or within a reasonable time, brought in, debriefed, and signed a non-disclosure. Okay, so there were times when you were in AORs where you could be exposed to stuff above your clearance, but you didn't have the top secret, but you were being involved in or exposed to above top secret stuff. Okay, and at any time, they can upgrade your clearance. Okay?
That's right.
But technically, normally you have to go through each clearance has to go through a high-level background check. But there are cases where they can do that. Yes.
So can the Gang of Eight? I mean, obviously the president has executive powers,
But they hold stuff from him all the time. The president has not seen all the Epstein files. The president has not seen all the Kennedy files. The president has not seen all the UFO files. There's other stuff that's gone on that the president, for whatever reason, hasn't either wanted to or been given access to certain information. So technically, the president doesn't have a clearance. He's the elected highest official in the country. The president of the United States doesn't have a clearance, but he has the authorization to view anything and declassify it if he wants to on the spot.
Correct.
But that doesn't happen that way, because here's what happens. He may know about something and the CIA has it, and the CIA will not give him the information to declassify. He may get a brief, but he won't get the documents. So even then, he can't release the documents for people to view. So these agencies will hold back classified material from the commander-in-chief. They have. It's been documented. They've done this.
Okay, but can't the legislative branch have a role in that?
They have less say than anything.
Really?
There's only a few people. That's the whole thing. I'll give you an example. It just happened. It has nothing to do with some highly classified material. I'm in the process of trying to get my will and everything done, finished up and everything. So when I pass, it's easy for my son. I needed a certain document that I've never had access to. I live in Illinois now, so I had to go through my congressman. And here's what I got told. They wouldn't give the document up, and I asked, well, okay, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. We can write a letter and complain, highly complain, or disagree with the decision, but ultimately, if they don't want to give the document up, they don't have to give the document up.
Wow.
And this goes on with everything. Like all this stuff Grish and these guys are saying, the unit that holds the documents that are classified have the final say in whether they're released or not. And you would think the president could force their hands, but there are cases where he hasn't been able to do that.
Wow. That's just...
And Congress does not have the oversight they claim they do.
Yeah, that's
the
why...
only thing they can do, they can cyclically say, all right, CIA, if you won't cooperate, we're cutting all your funding. So you realize that they did that, if they got enough people to do that, to vote for it, then if something went wrong, guess who would be at fault? Not the CIA. It would be the Congress people that withheld the funding and didn't let the CIA do their job.
So really, and this is what I mean, a lot of people have speculated out there, it's not legislative, it's not judicial, it's not executive, it's the military branch, it's the agency, CIA, DOD, Pentagon, etc. They're the ones who really control everything as far as information getting released, the classifications, who gets access. Is it them that makes all this determination?
Right. And technically, Tulsi Gabbard is in charge of all these agencies. Okay. But even she hasn't been granted certain access to certain documents from certain agencies. They can withhold this. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Is it the need to know?
I'm not there. I don't know. I have no idea how these all play out. I can tell you what happened personally with me.
Right, with your case.
When I went for my settlement, okay, eventually we proved without a questionable doubt I was in from 79 to 81. They stonewalled, including the Air Force, and claimed I was not in the Air Force from 79 to 81.
Oh my God.
They told a United States senator and his aide that I was not in. Well, I backdoored it and got enough documents to prove I was. So then they came back and said, okay, you've proved now that you were in 79. They knew I was in from 79 to 81.
Real?
And so then they said, well, withdraw your appeal, because they denied my claim based on the fact that I wasn't in the Air Force from 79 to 81. They denied it. They blatantly lied. They lied to the senator's office, to me, to the appeals agency, and everything, and said I wasn't in. Well, I got around it, and I was able to prove I was. Then they came back and said, all right, because I was already in the appeal process, and we'd already filed FOIA on different things to include, is there a classified record section? We want it in writing if there is, which we did. We already had it in writing, but we wanted them to say my records were held in the classified record section. They would not answer.
Time out.
Yeah.
Time out. Before you go, because this has got me like freaking out. But because you served as security at the base, right?
I was in law enforcement special operations. Yeah.
Right. So obviously,
special operations.
Obviously, they know you're there. You're part of the security apparatus. But was it because it was so classified what was going on at the base that they didn't even admit who the hell was at the base to begin with?
No, they didn't go that far. They just said I wasn't in the Air Force between 79 and 81. So this is what they said next, okay? Because there's an agency that when you appeal, it's run by the state, and this guy could look at my files closer, and he said, "Oh, you've been in a lot of classified stuff." I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "And they're withholding a lot of documents on you." I go, "Yeah." So we did a FOIA, and they refused to give up those documents. Then they came back when we proved I was in 79 and 81, and they said this: withdraw your appeal, resubmit the new evidence that you were in from 79 to 81.
Oh my God.
And we'll take care of you. Okay. So I did all this through the senator's office. Everything was documented, approved, and sent in. Okay. I told Cheryl at the time, I said, this ain't over, Cheryl. She goes, we've got them now. They're going to have to take care of you. She guaranteed it. I said, nope. Watch what happens next.
I don't mean to laugh.
This was in May. We did all this stuff in May after we forced them to admit I was in. And they issued a generic DD Form 214 saying I was in from 79 to 81. In July, I got a letter from the VA saying, thank you for withdrawing your appeal. Your case is closed. They closed the whole case. They didn't take care of me. They closed the whole case. So here's what goes next. I call her up. I get the letter that afternoon, and they're 2 hours behind me. I call her up. I said, I told you. And I told her exactly what happened. And she went ballistic. So she called the VA right away. And and again, I wasn't on these phone calls. I don't know who she spoke to, but she had access to people in the VA that were up in good higher positions. And she got the person that held the authority for the Phoenix region. She got to that level that day. And that person told her that there was a deal agreed upon and somebody high up in DC killed the deal. So
you can find out who that was?
No, well, she didn't tell me. Okay. So here's what we did next. We immediately went and wrote an inspector general. We immediately filed an inspector general complaint, and they got in the middle of it. Well, what happened with that was it ended up at the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice was involved, and so was the inspector general. Both of them could not give up my files and could not approve whether or not I got my disability. So here's how it played out. At that point, McCain was directly involved. He told the IG, Department of Justice, and the DOD, either this gets settled immediately, or I'm going to come in and hold full hearings on everything that's gone on with this and with Rendlesham. And that was in August, and I had my settlement by January.
Dude, before I jump and I go overboard with this, is this commonplace with other veterans similar to your situation, or do you think because of the sensitivity of what happened at Rendlesham and your specific involvement with this, that you're a special case where they really do not want to give you any information regarding your
I can only speak on what I've been told by other veterans, that because I have no access to their cases. Right before I was moving back to Illinois in May, this is when the appeal was filed. They brought me down to Phoenix. McCain was holding a press conference. I was there with 3 other veterans. There was myself and 3 other veterans. They were all having issues with getting disability. The difference between my case and theirs was they were given their records, but the areas that were going to prove whether they were injured or not, and it had nothing to do with UAPs or whatever, it had to do with their illnesses for disability and care, were all blacked out. So they didn't even remove the document that said they were treated. They just blacked it out. So the only person that I'm aware of that they won't even give my files up. Other people get their files, they just black out the information that they don't want.
They don't want to make the connection of what could have caused their disability or whatever.
It's just, no, whatever they were injured by was classified. Okay. So they weren't going to allow any doctor or the VA to see it. Okay. In other words, that was one of the things that McCain and I talked about that day afterwards. He was going to push legislation through that there had to be an agency that had the clearance to review the records for veterans that were injured in the line of duty, so that they could prove it. Because so many people, and this is true, this happened when I went to the citizens hearing. There was an older guy there that was the representative for the DC area, right? So he was on the panel that was with Bassett. After we testified that day, he still had a staffer that worked for him part-time. She came down and got a hold of me right away. And she said, we know exactly what's going on. And I said, okay. And she said, here's my card, get it to Cheryl, and I'll help her get through some of this. She says, because guess what his district was? Langley. Time and time again, people were getting injured, whether it was CIA agents, different agents and stuff that were getting injured in these different ops and stuff. And there was no record. There was no, declassified records showing what happened. So then when they went forward and said they were sick or hurt, there was nothing to prove that that's when they got injured. And that's something that went on with the Havana syndrome that these guys have talked about too. They say some people have been injured by the Havana syndrome. Do you remember when they came out and there was an IG investigation and they said it was clear people were injured by the Havana syndrome? The DOD said, no, that is not the truth. That is not what happened. And we're not.
That got me pissed now.
Yeah. We're not going to recognize, even when the Inspector General said there's enough evidence to support the fact that these people were injured by the Havana syndrome, the DOD said, no, you're wrong, and we're not going to take care of it.
Okay. This has me upset because now, based on the information that came out a few months ago in that New York Times article, and I know there are different opinions and I have I'm a friend of Robert Salas. I understand he's got his perspective. I get it. But it seems that the reason that you're having a lot of issues with yours specifically, and they don't want to acknowledge Havana syndrome, and they don't want to acknowledge when something's going on in other places because it's part of a top secret operational program, it's because you were part of a test that was not acknowledged. It was top secret, and they used our own military as subjects of that test. And it's so sensitive that they don't want nobody to know what the hell was going on, because as a result, you got injured from it. They have to own up to it, and they're not going to let anybody know the reasons why you got injured, because it was part of a program that should have never happened with our soldiers involved. I think.
Well,
I think that has something
let's
to do with
break this down. Let's break this down between Salas's incident and mine. Okay.
But do you think that's possible, though?
No. Here's how I want to lay it out based on all the information that I've been able to glean.
All right.
Salas's incident took place, and so did the incident with the Nimitz, which everybody said they would never test technology on active duty military personnel.
Exactly.
There's vulnerabilities that they have to find out what they are and how to counter them, right? The missiles were actually, and that's why I was surprised the report came out, they were telling the truth. And that's the problem. When you lie so much, even when you tell the truth, nobody believes it, right? So the bottom line is they knew there were vulnerabilities that certain weapon systems could bring down our nuclear capability.
Cold War?
Well,
Makes
no,
sense.
but they knew that we were vulnerable to the situation.
Right.
So the only way they could confirm it one way or another was to test how it would be brought down. And they did. And my point about Salas and stuff, and people get mad at me, is they didn't see aliens. No one reported seeing little green men, biological beings, or craft. They saw plasmas. They saw UAPs. There was objects flying around like what we saw in Rendlesham Forest, somewhat the descriptions that were around that area. They had particular equipment that was there between the SAGE radar system and this generator system that was tied directly to the command modules that were on there. And they were testing the vulnerability of this equipment, and they brought it down. And the thing about it was no one got injured that I'm aware of. Maybe somebody did. I don't know. But I've never heard of anybody get injured or hurt. The equipment went down. And one of Salas's excuses was, well, wait a minute. If we took it down, it would have been fried. Well, okay. So you're saying we couldn't fix something we were testing, but aliens came in and zapped it, and we figured it out in 3 days. We couldn't figure out what we did to it, but we could figure out what the aliens did to it. Okay? So that's the whole thing in a nutshell with that. And our incident, what we just talked about earlier, is I don't know at night one if they wanted us out there. I don't think they did. I think we went out there, we had an encounter, and it went from there. And that's what's kind of in the green veil.
But see, that makes
and then forward, they allowed us to go out there. Because in all honesty, after the first night, it should have got,
but
no one should have been able to do any more with it.
John, see, that's the whole thing. You may, and you were in, maybe this happened accidentally that you were there.
The first night. I don't believe
it's a liability. It's a liability to them because
not totally, because Bill, when you sign it, go in the military.
Oh yeah, that's true.
When you drafted was a little different, even though technically you can still get around it. But when you sign a contract to go in the military, you technically give up a lot of rights. It's just like people yell and scream, they can't hold your records. Those belong to you. Actually, they can. If I was involved in something that's classified, they have the right to withhold that information involving the classification stuff. They don't technically have the right to withhold all my records, but they do have a right to withhold the part that would be involved in something that's classified.
All right. Do you think, because that you brought this up in this series, and when you wrote this, the Gang of Eight, because that really is, all these hearings are in a room off to the side, subcommittees. You don't really see any of the people, the ranking officials in those rooms, which gives it to me no credibility. They don't give a shit. They don't care. You see the other members, the junior senators and all this, but you don't see the Gang of Eight members in there. If you were approached by a Gang of Eight member.
I was.
Okay. But so you're not interested if they, okay, let me rephrase the question. If they said to you, we're going to go in and we're going to find the documents related to what happened to you at Rendlesham, would you be game to participate in something with that?
Okay, that's never happened, but let me lay out the other scenario. I was contacted. I didn't beg to go up there.
By a Gang of Eight member?
No, let me finish.
Okay, I'll let you talk.
I didn't beg like Salas did to go up there. They came to me. And it was a DOD DOD contractor that was working for Rubio's committee that was part of the Gang of Eight. His committee was part of the Gang of Eight. Okay. He contacted me. We did an interview for 2 hours. He looked into some information and he came back and he said they wanted me to come up and they wanted me to meet with the Aero Committee and they wanted me to meet with the Gang of Eight. And I turned them down. Wow. First of all, I wasn't going to be allowed to bring my attorney. Second of all, and I've got all proof. People can say I'm making this up. I don't. Toby Martinez wrote an article in the Roswell Daily. I provided all the emails and all the proof. And he wrote the article about a year ago, laying it all out and who was involved. So yes, I have all the proof. So I refused to go up and I refused to meet with the Aero Committee. I refused to meet with the Gang of Eight. I refused to testify in front of Congress. And I refused to meet with Mellon and those guys or be in that latest documentary that's coming out in November that they're finally going to release on Amazon Prime. I refuse to be involved in any of this for two reasons, three really. Number one, what you brought up. Where are the documents? They've got them. They know they're there. That's why they wanted me up there. They won't let me see them or they won't release them. They didn't even, allegedly, they came out with the Salas stuff, but they've claimed that there's 2 or 3 other incidents that they've looked into pretty closely. One of them is rumored the Rendlesham incident, and they're not going to release what they learned about it. Number two, I told him, and I just told Gresh 2 months ago, because we had a long conversation over about 3 different times over 3 days. I said, go find out if my records are still classified. Go to the DOD and find out what the status is of my records and what's going on. No one will touch that. And the third is that, again, I could go up and testify, but where's the proof? I have my settlement documents. I have proof that Rendlesham was the reason why I got him, and I have a lot of evidence, but I still don't have the government admitting that my records are classified, and I don't have them admitting that what happened to Rendlesham. So I said, get the proof. And then the last thing was they wanted NDAs signed. And they offered me something else that was very interesting.
I know legal representation.
Yeah, but I have the proof. Are you ready for this one?
What?
Javi Loeb, I was supposed to get a meeting with Javi Loeb and go to his observatory, and I was going to get shown things. And I was supposed to get taken to NORAD and get a briefing. I have all this in writing. Toby's seen it all, has all the documents, and I turned them down because they're being disingenuous. Every single time they go up there and they open their mouths, they lie or they lie by omission. And they mislead and they don't tell the truth. Okay? And the only guy that's been about as truthful as the guy that just testified last that told them to their face that I can't talk about what you want to know unless we go in the SCIF, and you won't have the clearance anyway, even if we got a SCIF to hear what I know or what I'm exposed to.
They don't have the
That tells you that Congress has no authority and no oversight over any of this.
And that's why these hearings, to me, in a general perspective, are full of it, because we're never going to see the documents. They're classified. They can't. How are we going to see it if they can't even see it?
There are, again, the Gang of Eight would have the most access to whatever. But even then, that has to be given up by the unit. That has to be given up by the person in charge of the documents. And if they say no, there ain't a dang thing that can be done about it, and they won't know and they won't get access to it.
Are you aware? Do you think that you were asked by the Gang of Eight because of Rendlesham? What happened there? Because if that's the case, are you aware of Adrian Bustinza or any of the others being contacted them to appear, or you don't know?
I know Adrian wasn't, and I don't know if anybody else was, but as far as I know, no. I don't even think Halt was asked, because he never directly gave me a straight answer one way or another, but he was implying that he never was asked to go up. He talked to somebody at Arrow, but he didn't go up. He didn't go in and meet with them. He had a brief phone conversation with them.
All right. I want to ask one more question because we got to wrap up, believe it or not. This went so fast. So a congressional member of the Gang of Eight cannot reinstate or give you any kind of classification as far as clearance to get into a SCIF if they said, listen, can get access.
Can I bring up my point? Remember what happened with Gresh? they would not give, the DOD would not give him access to a skiff for Grist to give him a briefing.
But didn't they reinstate his classification?
Yeah, but they wouldn't give him access to the skiff. They couldn't even get a skiff to interview him. And then they did eventually give him some of his clearance back.
Yeah.
But even then, those people involved don't have the clearances to hear what he knows, or the real good stuff. So the only people that in Congress would be the Senate, the House majority leader and minority leaders, and the heads of the intelligence committees. Those are the people that have the highest clearances and access to this information.
I've seen a little interest by some, but not a consensus overall. Like they haven't.
They're not going to touch this. This stuff goes in, whatever it is, goes into the intelligence communities, and it goes into the defense industry.
And the money.
Money, but they don't want
the contractors, the SAPs, all these fucking black project programs. Where's the money? Where's the oversight? There is none.
No, there isn't any. They've even admitted that. Nancy Mace just came back and said that they were signing. Was it Mace? One of them, I think it was Mace. No, was it Mace or was it Luna?
It could have been.
They got a briefing. They got a briefing on an essay on the black budgets, and they didn't get anything about them. They just had, this is the figure they want, and they had to agree to the figure. So they didn't even get told what they were agreeing to. They just got given a number of whatever amount of money, and you have to agree to this money for these SAP programs. Wow. So they just sign a blank check overall to these agencies to work on these projects. And that came out publicly. I'm not making this up. This is all there.
All right. So one last question to you. And if they said to you, we have the documents and we'll allow you to bring legal representation, and I don't know if I would ever say trust, because I don't know if I trust any of them. But if they made assurance to you that they would like you to testify at a hearing, but with the provisions that they will provide the documents of what happened at Rendlesham, would you do it?
Here's the problem, okay? The only way an open hearing would work in that format would be they would have to come out and say, here's the evidence that, number one, the government was aware of what went on in Rendlesham, that they've admitted his records are classified, and that he was injured by whatever. That would be, then I would go up there. If they would agree up front.
Because they're not going to declassify them. They're not going to declassify.
They don't have to declassify everything. They just have to say,
acknowledge it.
Your records were classified. Yes, you were injured at Rendlesham, and yes, you were injured in the line of duty by like a UAP or something. They'd have to openly admit that the government would have to admit that the incident, what happened in the incident, was what led to my injuries.
And do you think it was related to radiation?
There's no doubt that Christopher Green said that. That's all in the Green Veil. Everything that I was told.
That's why I'm putting this together, so people get a perspective. What you're seeing going on in these chapters of the Green Veil, because chapter 12 was significant and the way it looks like it's going to proceed. That's why I brought all this up.
Because I'm going to throw you one other curveball, nothing to do with the Green Veil. It just came out, and I don't have all the information yet, that 20 years ago, a guy wrote a book. I forget his name. I think his first name's Bill. I think it was told. But he wrote a book that they were working on a program, and they have a program name, and it's like Stargate.
Not Bill Cooper, not William Cooper.
No. This is somebody's name I've never heard before. They were working on a program to do telepathy to aliens. This was 20 years ago, and the book came out, and now they're bringing this out now, 20 years later, that this was happening back then. So I'm going to throw one more thing at you before we sign off tonight. There's some things I'm starting to wonder about. What anniversary is coming up in December, Bill?
Yours.
No. What's coming up? It'll be 8 years, December 17th, when the New York Times article dropped.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, think about this. If these remote viewing programs were real, and I say if because they claim they were, but there's never been evidence to prove exactly how well they worked or whatever else. Let's say they were able to, back in the past, 70s, whatever, see something coming up in the future that was a defining moment for humanity, and they've been trying to manipulate it ever since to make it come out differently than what they saw in the remote view. And it's 8 years. And guess what? The 17th is when the article dropped. The 19th is when the Three-Eye Atlas gets the closest to Earth. And that's when, who knows what's going to happen next.
Dude, it is kind of weird when you see all these things coming together the way they have.
It's all starting to come together. Yeah, you can't help but say this stuff doesn't totally add up. It just doesn't.
Well, folks, that's our show for tonight. Make sure to check out the episode on Thursday, because if you watch chapter 12 and you kind of see everything's coming together, well, now you're going to see where it goes next. And I'm not going to give out any spoilers. Matter of fact, before we go, and I also want to say thanks to Keith Carlock for everything that he's done in regards.
He's done an awesome job.
Yes, and I'm going to put his information up here shortly, excuse me. So you can go check out his work here, and it's bcss.rocks. Also, Rose City Sound Project on YouTube. You can see it at Rose City Sound Project. But yeah, John, it's cray, bro. I mean, I don't know what the heck is going on, to be honest. It's
look what I wrote in chapter 12 before it came out.
Oh yes, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm just going to give everybody a little hint of what's coming, the description. And definitely, if you haven't seen chapter 12, that is crucial that you do, because it kind of puts the pieces together up to that point. But now it looks like it's just, and it is mind-boggling when you think of Three-Eye Atlas. When you watch 12, you're like, oh. And we'll talk about this next week, but he wrote that before it was even known.
I wrote that in the spring, yes.
That's wild.
Before Three-Eye Atlas was even being talked about.
It's unbelievable.
It's in there, and that's why I've said, and I don't disagree with people, because we had an argument a few episodes ago where this lady said it's just a comment. Okay, it could very well be. But why is Javi saying something possibly different? Why are other people starting to wonder the trajectory and everything? And last but not least, why is all the world governments staying quiet on what they saw go by Mars? Those are the three things that are getting very interesting to me. So, folks, stay tuned. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe the green veil is real. Maybe it's what's going to happen coming in December.
Yeah. The next chapter, again, is The Watchers Below on Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to read it really fast because we have to wrap up. The walls of secrecy finally crack. In a secure debriefing chamber beneath Raven Rock, Jack Barrett and Sergeant B come face-to-face with General Ashburn. We all know who that is back in the past.
Who? Tell me.
That was the general. I can't remember his name.
Williams, now. General Williams.
Right. That was the one that went out there. And
no, Williams wasn't out there. Halt was the colonel. Williams he was actually a colonel at the time, but he made general right after the event happened.
Wow. All right. General Ashburn, the man who lied to them in 1980. What unfolds is a revelation decades in the making. The object in Rendlesham Forest was never a craft. It was a sentient harmonic interface, rooted not in space but in time. As memories resurface and evidence long buried is brought to light, Jack realizes the feedback loop he opened 45 years ago was never closed. Across the globe, subtle anomalies, which I've seen chapter 13 to prepare. It is unbelievable, the stuff that's in there. Intensify, children speaking prophetic words, church bells ringing without cause, telescopes intercepting echoes. Meanwhile, foreign powers aren't just watching, they're tuning in. Russia and China are intercepting fragments of the signal, preparing their own attempts to interface with the phenomenon. Inside the NSC emergency session, President Rainier and top intelligence officials confront the growing global breach. If they lose control of the narrative, the phenomenon itself may change its tone. In the observation chamber, Jack and B face the truth. So this is coming Thursday, and I'm telling you, I seen it. I was like, wow. And you know, I have to say, John, my belief, speculation is that Three-Eye Atlas is a comet until proven otherwise, you know, by something else. But when I seen this going on in the last few chapters, and you did this in the spring before, I'm like, I don't want to say it, but holy shit. That's just
On that note, folks, good night. Holy shit.
We're out of here, everybody. Have a great night. Be well, be blessed, be safe, and have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Until then, good night.